To Liberia now, where presidential campaigns have come to an end. Candidates have been taking to various parts of the country in a last-minute push to woo voters. The stakes feel higher this year. There are 20 contenders vying to replace President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Johnson Sirleaf steps down after 12 years in power. Incumbent Vice President Joseph Boakaiis, Alexander Cummings and footballer turned politician George Weah are seen as the favorites.
No one should be afraid of change. I did that. I was never afraid of change. And look at me in my life. I transitioned from a professional soccer player to a statesman. You can be that person. We are the same. If you look at your faces today, I know you can relate your story to my story.
Weah, who talks about change, is completely out of his league. Okay, we're talking governance here, we're not talking sports. So, me as a lawyer, compared with the rest of the candidates, is the person who they're paying attention to.
Well, Liberians have gone to the polls to elect a new president. CGTN's Robert Nagila is joining us now from Monrovia. He's covering the political developments there. Robert, the elections are coming to a close. What's the latest there?
Well, Beatrice, the mood can only be described as festive. The long snaking election convoys, colorful. There's a festive atmosphere really in the air, whatever way you look at it. Now, there have been concerns of violence initially. However, it's been largely peaceful throughout. And the police also say that they've had no major incidents to deal with. Now, we spoke to the Deputy Police Commissioner yesterday, and he says that so far in terms of deployments, they're happy with all the logistics that they're employing in this particular electoral process, which kicks off on Tuesday, that is tomorrow at 6 a.m. Now, it will run from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. in the evening, after which we then expect the counting of electoral votes to commence. But thus far, as you've rightly said, Cummings, George Weah and the Vice President really are considered the front runners. But perhaps the intrigue in this particular poll has been the alliance between George Weah, the former international footballer who's highly regarded here by the youth, and the wife of Mr. Taylor, former rebel leader who's currently serving a 50-year term in a British prison for crimes against humanity. A lot of people, some people say that this actually gives him an edge amongst Taylor supporters who will now back Weah supporters, but we'll wait to see how the outcome of this race after the voting process is complete tomorrow. Beatrice?
Well, Robert, this election presents the first major political transition since the Civil War ended in 2003. So is it safe to assume that Liberia has successfully made peace with its bloody past?
Well, yes and no, Beatrice. It has made some huge strides since the last civil war in the 90s and the one that ended in 2003. Now, this is largely as a result of the efforts by the current president, Ellen Johnson, who is now stepping down after 2 terms. Now, she focused a lot on building institutions in this country, and she is credited largely with that. However, there are economic problems still. Whilst the economy, the GDP of this country has grown over the last 15 or so years, there are still major problems. And there is a section of the society that feels left out, a section that participated in the Civil War. And here I'm talking about the ex-combatants, as you will see in this next piece.
I'm General Skinny. During the time, revolution time, they call me General Skinny.
13 years I started fighting.
Why they killed my mother way before me?
Why I got to kill my friend because he killed my wife, my woman before.
We don't have peace.
Close to 1 million people were killed in Liberia's 2 civil wars. These men, when they were children, were among the killers. Some fought for Prince Johnson, whose forces killed former President Samuel Doe. Others fought under Charles Taylor, who's now serving a 50-year prison term in the United Kingdom. Now, 14 years after the fighting ended, former enemies stand shoulder to shoulder, brought together by their circumstances. They say they've been abandoned.
Everywhere we go, people are chasing or running behind or every day using stone. People calling us Zogo in our own country. We don't have rent, we don't get nowhere to lay our head.
More than 100,000 former fighters went through a UN disarmament program. Many were retrained to support themselves in peacetime, but they say no one wants to hire them.
For any job, someone has to recommend you, and people say we are ex-combatants.
Many earn a living washing cars or from other casual labor. The little they make, enough for a meal. Most sleep in the open, by the beach or the graveyard.
For many of these combatants, this election represents perhaps the most important event in their lifetimes. For them, it represents a chance to restart their lives once again, but this time for the better.
We expect a lot from the incoming president, because we know he can't deliver the goods.
Liberia's next leader will have a full in-tray, jobs, health, education. So these veterans are at the back of a very long queue. Still, for them, Tuesday's vote offers hope, and that's a start. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Monrovia, Liberia.
But Beatrice, it's not just that group. There are several groups within this country that feel they've been left out of nation building. And while they credit the president with a peaceful transition, because that's what her government is regarded as, they feel that it is now time to move on. And the economy really is on top of the agenda of the next president who takes over from Ellen Johnson. Beatrice?
Right, Robert Nagila, following Liberia's presidential election there in the capital, Monrovia.